This morning, giving thanks. Hear the incredible story of this man. His first Thanksgiving with family in nearly 2 decades after his release from prison for a murder he maintains he didn't commit.
I have the truth on my side. The truth is I'm innocent. I'm here for something that I didn't do.
Now from 42nd and 2nd, this is New York's very own PIX11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. This morning, I'm going to introduce you to a man who had his first Thanksgiving dinner with his family in 36 and a half years. He's been in prison all that time, some of it on death row, for a murder he maintains to this day he did not commit. Ronnie Long was granted parole last December and is now appealing to the state of New Jersey to clear his name and grant him total exoneration. Ronnie claims he could have been set free many years earlier if he agreed to admit guilt, something he consistently has refused to do. Good to have you with us, Ron.
Thank you.
So, being liberated after 36 and a half years, giving thanks to be home, share that emotion with us.
I'm very grateful for being home after the nightmare that I endured. Sometimes I feel grateful and sometimes I feel pissed off because it shouldn't have taken this long, and that shouldn't have been the result. But my faith keeps me together, and I have close family. My mom and dad are still here. They're in their 80s. That's something that I always feared, not seeing my parents, them not seeing me released. I have my daughter. She's in her 40s. She was a little girl when I got locked up. My son, he was a little boy when I got locked up. When I came home, we only had 4 days together. He died in a boating accident. He was saving another little kid, Ronald Long Jr. He's a Marine, I'm a Marine. My biggest supporter from prison all the way to this day has been my sister, Donna Brewer. She gave me my first car, she gave me an apartment, and she makes sure I keep money in my pocket.
So what was that moment like when you finally stepped out last December and here was the whole family waiting to greet you?
It was awesome. It was really awesome because I hadn't seen so many people in so many years, and we've all gotten old.
Now, you told me that you could have been released at least 18 years earlier if you took their plea deal and admitted guilt. I want to hear about this crime in a moment, but if you had admitted guilt, but yet you stood your ground, you would not admit guilt, and you spent another 18 years in prison.
It was no way that I was going to ever consider taking a plea bargain. So I spent about 3 years in the county awaiting trial while they built a fake, flimsy case around me. And when I went to trial, I just knew that I would be acquitted. That didn't happen. But they came down to as low as 10-year plea bargain, and I would be out, and as soon as I will be out in 3 years. It was about 3 years before I went to trial. They kept coming lower and lower and lower. So I could have been out years ago had I taken a plea bargain. But that was never going to happen because I didn't do it. And I also had the strong belief in the Constitution and the legal system. And surprise, surprise.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's flash back to that day, December 11, 1982.
Right.
Atlantic City, you just got an honorable discharge from the Marines. You're in the Merchant Marine, right? You had a job waiting for you. You're visiting your family in Atlantic City, and there were 3 criminal incidents. Right. There was a robbery of an apartment building, a robbery of a liquor store, a robbery of a gas station, shootings in all 3 incidents, and in one of them, the shopkeeper in the liquor store was killed. It was with a .25 caliber revolver. You had a .25 caliber revolver, right?
The police found out that I had a .25 caliber automatic, and they went on this relentless effort to build a case around me. They threw out one charge, the gas station crime. They threw that charge out because I was not identified in any lineup. And As we speak, there's not one tiny shred of evidence in the entire case to link me to any crime. They recruited a jailhouse witness after I'd been held for over 2 years to say that I confessed to him.
Paul Pellegrino.
Paul Pettigrew.
Pettigrew.
He was planted in a unit. It was a sloppy setup. He was planted in a unit with me to say that this is where this jailhouse confession was facilitated.
He said you and your cousin had pulled off these crimes.
He said that I told him that me and my cousin committed these crimes. He was the star witness. Paul Pettigrew was facing over 200 years for 12 cab driver armed robberies, and he pleaded guilty to 35, served 17 and a half before he would be paroled. And then he got his sweetheart deal for becoming a false witness against me.
And you got convicted. It took the jury an hour and a half to find you guilty of robbery, murder, and assault.
And an hour to give me the death penalty.
Now, we have to pick up on Pettigrew for a moment, because he later on, he recanted, and I saw him in an interview where he said that was not true. He said he lied.
Right, he recanted 3 times.
And that had no impact on the prosecution?
Well, they never allowed it in court for a hearing. At one point, the prosecution threatened him to keep his mouth shut or they would throw him back in prison.
Now, the question arises, though, the victims were shot. They found shell casings from a .25 caliber.
Right.
You had a .25 caliber.
Right.
But they couldn't locate your gun.
Okay, well, I had a gun temporarily and got rid of it. We established that there were about 35,000 different brands, and I followed every news story in Atlantic City Press for crimes that happened with a .25 caliber, and I started collecting the newspaper articles because any of those could have been used in the crimes. But it was circumstantially just built right around me. So that's where the plea bargain started coming in.
Now, a key here, you said there was no evidence to link you to the crime.
Right.
But you said there was one key piece of evidence, a cigarette butt, that was found at one of the crime scenes.
Right.
That could have exonerated you at the outset, but
And
you had
still
difficulty.
can.
But there was no DNA at that time. There was no DNA testing back in 1982.
Well, there was no DNA technology back then.
Back in 82, 85, right.
Okay, this was at the gas station crime that I had already been cleared from. In the middle of my trial, a cop came in and said that he found a Newport cigarette butt at that crime scene, and that they used all of my canteen receipts to show that I'd been smoking Newports. So the theme of the prosecution was, he smokes Newports, he did it. They used all of my canteen receipts. My mother bought a suit jacket for me. The judge says his mother left an empty package of Newports in the suit jacket. I testified. And, you know, that's a feat in and of itself, especially in a capital murder prosecution. I testified. I was on the stand for about 10 and a half hours. And the prosecutor could not say that I lied about anything. His theme was, who would have the biggest motive to lie?
Talk to me about the futility at that moment. You're found guilty.
Right.
Took 1 hour to determine you were going to be sentenced to death.
Right.
The futility at that moment, knowing you were facing death, and you said you knew you didn't do this crime.
Well, I thought that because of the death penalty that I would get higher scrutiny on the conviction, because it was just like, okay, we'll deal with all these things later on appeal. It's just like one thing after the next. It's like, wait, where's the fairness in any of this? The prosecutor intentionally made race an issue. He called me an equal opportunity shooter who shoots white people and black people. And he called me a brother. And he pranced around the courtroom talking like with black dialect. And some of the jurors were snickering, because they knew what he was imparting.
Was this an all-white jury?
No, it was 2 black ladies on the jury. But they were snickering because, it was like the dog whistles. Okay, so there's no evidence, so we used everything else. But the most important part of the whole case is in terms of the murder scene. They had an eyewitness to the murder scene who cleared me. They had the witness hypnotized. and given amnesiac instructions to forget everything. It will all be completely forgotten. The judge says you could bring this out to the jury. And at the time of trial, the judge says, no, I'm not going to let this in because you're trying to punish the prosecutor for destroying a witness, as if it's okay to tamper with witnesses when you're the prosecutor. So I knew that I was not getting a fair trial. But at the moment they brought that cigarette butt testimony in, that was the moment that I knew I would be convicted, because there was no way to defend against that.
But for years, you tried to get that introduced again to have DNA when there was DNA technology.
Well, when I learned about DNA technology on cigarettes in 1997, that's when I started the journey. I filed motion after motion. First, they said it wouldn't make a difference. The judge denied me. On appeal, the state said they lost the evidence. That was not good enough for me because
where does it stand now? I mean, where does it stand now? Did they ever
go to court next month.
They ever find the cigarette? Did they?
Oh, I found it. I
it's
used
there?
the Open Public Records Act. I was a pest. I found it. When I went back, they said, we dealt with this already. Well, you didn't. Because I never.
So they have
got
the cigarette, and now you're in court trying to get that
Yes.
DNA test on it?
And I have a very capable attorney.
I have to ask you this. You were fighting all of this while you were on death row. 5 years on death row in New Jersey. And what's going through your mind during that period of time? What was it like being in death row, sitting there, convinced no one else is believing it, but you believe you're innocent, you know you're innocent, and no one else is believing you?
I knew I was getting out. It was no doubt in my mind. I knew I was getting out. I just didn't think it would take this long. And I didn't have the type of legal team representing me during those early years. So I started studying the law. And I started writing briefs for other people, and I started getting a lot of cases overturned, 12 murder convictions overturned, briefs that I wrote. And my primary focus in life is the legal system.
You became the premier jailhouse lawyer in New Jersey.
So
Everyone came to you. You wrote about 1,000 briefs. You wrote about 100 cases,
Right.
and you overturned a number of murder convictions except yours.
And I made a lot of people angry, a lot of prosecutors, a lot of judges. I embarrassed a lot of lawyers because they looked the other way. And I showed how they looked the other way. And sometimes people don't like to be challenged by people from the lowest rung of society, convicts, prisoners, uppity, so. But I maintained my dignity. I maintained my integrity. Through all them 36 and a half years in prison, I got a...
How did you survive all that time? 36 and a half years of your life. 24 how old were you when you went in?
24 when I went in.
And you're 61 now.
I'm 61 now. I was 60 when I got out. I told you I'm a Marine, and I have discipline, and I was trained for some of the roughest circumstances and how you deal with them, name, rank, and serial number.
Ron, I have to ask you this. You're out on parole,
Right.
And you've got the papers in. You want to have your name cleared. You're seeking total exoneration. You've been working with former Governor Jim McGreevey. You have an appeal before the state and the governor. But yet, in the eyes of the law, you're still a convicted felon, correct?
Well,
until that parole
I'm
is clear.
exonerated. The law changes.
What would you say? Here we're talking about you recognizing Thanksgiving being with your family. But what would you say to the family of the man who was killed, who you were charged with killing? Albert Compton.
I have nothing to say to them. I don't even know who they are. They never reached out to me. They never wanted to find out anything about me. I'm sure if somebody killed somebody in my family, I would want to know who's this guy that killed him, and I would like to know anything about him, But I have nothing to say to them. He was a victim, but so was I. His life was taken, but so was mine. I'm still here. He's not, unfortunately, but you can't compare one victim to another victim. It's the system who owes us both, because they could have found his murderer years ago. They were set. They had tunnel vision. We got somebody, we're going to stick with this person here. And they don't confuse us with the truth. So everything that goes into a wrongful conviction case is in my case. I never knew that studies would come out and show that lying witnesses, jailhouse witnesses, perjured testimony by lying police officers. That's what my entire case was about. And I had judges and lawyers who looked the other way. What I needed was a 25 or 30-year-old lawyer who was tenacious, who would not look the other way and make all the challenges that I've been making. And so I kept my case alive. My case has never not been in litigation for the entire case.
And that's what kept you going, your belief that someday you would be released.
And someday I will.
And now they have in New Jersey, the Attorney General has a conviction review board, which has never been there before.
Right.
And this may overturn other cases.
Right.
So now you're 61. What about your future? Where do you go from here?
Well, take it one day at a time. I'm okay. I can't look back and cry about what was done to me. I can only look forward. One of the biggest regrets was losing my son. And I grieve for my son every day.
Ron, you've been through quite an ordeal, and good luck as you go forward with your appeals, and we'll keep in touch with you and report your story as it goes on. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story. Have a good holiday. Thank you, Ron. Now, Ron will be in court next Wednesday seeking a court order demanding DNA testing of fingerprints on the .25 caliber shell casings and the cigarette butt found at one of the crime scenes. It's testing, as Ron said, he's been attempting to get for 20 years. As well, his case is still before the New Jersey Conviction Review Board. When we come back, I'll be joined by Jeffrey Deskovic, the founder of an organization whose mission is to free wrongfully convicted people. Stay with us.
You're watching New York's very own PIX11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
I'm now joined by Jeffrey Deskovic, himself a victim of wrongful conviction. Jeffrey spent 16 years in prison for rape and murder he did not commit. Since his release, he has dedicated himself to helping others through his Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. Thus far, he has freed 7 wrongfully convicted people. Furthermore, he has helped pass 6 laws in New York aimed at preventing wrongful convictions. So good to have you with us again.
Thank you.
I talked to you about Ron Long a number of years ago. You looked into his case. You listened to his story. What do you make of it?
He comes across very compelling, very credible. Without question, he should be given the DNA testing. There have been other people who've been exonerated through testing of a cigarette butt. If you think about it, there's nothing to lose. Either it's going to confirm his guilt or it's going to show he's innocent, in which case he can have his name cleared and authorities can focus the investigation on finding the actual criminal.
But the story he told that we just listened to.
Extremely credible, extremely compelling.
Okay, let's talk about what you're doing. Why? Let me ask you first of all, why are we hearing now of so many of these cases being overturned? You told me that there have been 2,500 cases overturned in the past number of years. Why are we hearing this now?
Yeah, sure. There's been more than 2,500 wrongful convictions overturned. That's in the National Registry of Exoneration. Why are they being overturned? Well, number one, there are more lawyers that are working on these cases, and there's more innocence entities that are working on them. I think media is also a big thing, lots of documentaries, podcasts, investigative journalism. So that's creating a level of awareness that's triggering people to go into action. And I think that judges and prosecutors are starting to become more open-minded in some cases, and so there's less of a fight in order to do further investigation.
Now, in cases you've dealt with, some of the people who you've gotten exonerated, initially they admitted the crime. Why do people confess to something they did not do?
Threats and false promises, not thinking about the long term, just trying to get out of that situation in the short term. Like I falsely confessed. You know, I was 16, I was threatened, I was given false promises, and I was in fear of my life, and I wasn't thinking about the big picture.
You were in fear of your life, so you
was.
told them you committed to rape and murder.
Yes, because I was threatened, and I was also told that if I told them what they wanted to hear, I was going to be let go, that I wasn't going to be arrested.
And that's the case so often in these other situations.
Yes, it is.
But also, what about their representation, the lawyers who represent them? I mean, you don't have the O.J. Simpson dream team.
That's exactly right. Bad lawyering is a major cause of wrongful conviction, and that also, along with the other causes of wrongful conviction, you get bad lawyering plus false confession or misidentification or a lying informant. That is a recipe for a wrongful conviction.
Now, through your foundation, the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, you've brought about some reform and some legislation dealing with discovery reform in New York. What is that?
Yeah, discovery refers to sharing information between the defense and the prosecution. So now it's automatic. They have to give everything over at an arrest. From there, they have 15 days, and then they have another 15 days to turn everything over. Anything beyond that, they will have to get a court order.
Now, many of the district attorneys and law enforcement throughout the state, they're opposed to this. Why?
Yeah, they're getting a leg up by the way the system was. They'd like to keep it that way. They're doing a lot of fear mongering. So they're saying that there's witnesses are going to be reluctant to testify, and that they're going to be in danger, and that even murders will happen. In New Jersey, right across the river, they have automatic discovery. Bodies aren't floating up and down the Hudson River.
So
can I just add something real quick? It's essential for a defense lawyer to have access to the evidence against their client in order to do investigation and to prepare defense. Under the old system, lawyers would only get all the prior witness statements on the eve of a hearing, on the eve of trial. Now everything is automatic. There would also be lots of legal motions back and forth and delays. That's all out the window now.
So this all takes effect at the beginning of the year?
Yes.
But also something else takes effect in New York State at the end of the year, bail reform.
Yes.
How will that impact?
Yeah, bail reform will impact because a lot of people who are falsely accused, they get worn down by being in jail long periods of time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, unable to make a $5,000, $10,000 bail. So it's going to prevent innocent people from It'll help to prevent innocent people from pleading guilty, and it's easier to fight your case and for a lawyer to have access to their client when their client is not incarcerated, so it's going to help that way. I don't think that the reform went far enough because it doesn't affect people who are charged with serious felonies. So a lot of wrongful convictions are in murders, rapes, robberies. I think that we need reform for that. So items like, say, house arrest or ankle monitoring could meet legitimate needs of public safety while also allowing people not to be incarcerated. Maybe the last point on bail reform, Marvin, is that when you're in jail and you can't make bail, you're essentially being punished before you have been convicted for being poor, because people with money can make the bail. So it's kind of a class.
Discriminatory.
It's discriminatory, yeah, socioeconomic status, yes.
Now, I have to say this. Now, you're free now. How many years you spent?
I spent 16 years in prison wrongfully from age 17 to 32, and I've been home for 13 years since I've been exonerated.
And in those 13 years, I have to say this. I know you went to law school. You
Yes.
sent me the notice when you graduated. You
Yes.
had that thrill. You came on the program. And you've also passed the bar.
Yes.
So are you now a practicing attorney?
No, there's a few minor steps I have to do before I get the law license, and once I get the law license, I'll be able to say that I'm a lawyer. The main thing, Marvin, is can you graduate law school? Can you pass the bar? The other things are just minor procedural technicalities that have to be done, but that's not what determines whether you'll be a lawyer or not. It's inevitable at this point now, having passed the bar.
But right now, your goal is to help as many incarcerated people who are wrongly.
Yes.
How many cases are you working on now?
11.
11. And so far, you've freed 7 of those cases?
No, the 7 that we freed is separate and apart from the 11 that we're working on right now.
Now, you were freed by DNA evidence.
Yes, I was.
And they found the criminal who's now serving time?
Yeah, correct. I want to add that the criminal who was left free while I was doing time for his crime, he killed a second victim who was a school teacher and mother of 2 just 3.5 years later. That often happens in these wrongful conviction cases.
Jeffrey Deskovic, thank you very much, and congratulations and continue your good work. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you too, Marvin. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And that'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website, PIX11.com/News Closeup. Up next, Greta Van Susteren and Full Court Press. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, everyone.